is Henk with another session of Skull Sessions. And my guest today is Erin Riley. And you have a new book. Is it out yet?
I do have a new book out. It actually came out in December of 2022, and it's called A Dark Force, 20 Years with a Covert Narcissist.
Okay. And you were going to talk a little bit about that and kind of tell people the warning signs and how the mentality works, right?
Yeah, I'll do my best to start with it. So I am probably a little older than some of your listeners, but maybe not all, because horror is a much loved genre.
It's a broad genre,
ages, yeah. Right? Yeah. Just so much. And I'm such a fan. I'm 64 years old. I had a big career in the music business for 40 years, had a good degree of self-confidence and self-esteem. And I guess I thought maybe I was a little bit more, I guess my role was to be a helper and help other people. I always thought that would be like, the right way to live. That said, when I was 40 years old, I met a man who was a very kind of low-key, quiet, sort of helpful, nice guy, a little like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. And it turned out to be really quite the shapeshifter and quite a monster. We were together many years, 20 years. We did not get married for the first 5 years, but we were living together. And it was I would say about a year and a half into the 20-year relationship where I started to see some really unsettling behaviors and things he would say, like arrogance and things like that. But certainly there were a lot of arguments that we would have over time, and he was really quite frightening, this guy who had seemed really so safe and so quiet.
But you married him regardless?
I did. And that's when, you can't really blame one person for any kind of a relationship issue now, can you? You really have to look at both parties. So I myself grew up in Manhattan in New York City, and I grew up very much a neglected child. I had a little brother, but we were both neglected by our parents. They were both working. My father was alcoholic. My mother was fairly narcissistic. They were both out of the house working all the time. We were left to raise ourselves. So I don't think I had a real clue about, what does a real love relationship or a strong family dynamic look like, So that all said, people who grow up in neglectful or dysfunctional homes often go one way or another. They can either become narcissistic or they can become what people call codependent. And codependent people are people who are dependent on other people for their sense of well-being and value. So for me, helping other people instead of putting the focus on myself made me feel better, right? Because I didn't really have a real strong sense of who I was. So my job is I'm a helper. And I probably learned that helping my alcoholic father as a child, right? Being a helper is a good thing, being a little bit more of an adult than I was a child. So anyhow, that's how I got into it. I still married him, but I think I was trying to fix him. I thought I could cheer him up and make him a happier guy.
Everything that you're telling me sounds like it sounds like kind of the origin story of most horror characters. Like they're a little bit quiet first and a little bit broken, but they seem like they have a tender side. And then as people start to try and help them turn to a better person, all their nasty tendencies start to come out, and it slowly starts to dominate. And I think people feel like, I'm so invested, I'm not going to give up now. And then it just gets worse and worse. It goes down the rabbit hole.
It sure does get worse and worse and worse. And whatever you're seeing in the beginning of a relationship with somebody like that, whether it be a monster or a narcissistic monster, somebody with narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, they are that person that's so frightened and lashing out. That person you see in the beginning that's sort of soft and quiet and charming is deeply fearful with deep self-loathing, but covering it up. And that's when they talk about the false self. That's the false self versus the true self. And same thing when you look at superheroes transitioning, we've got Clark Kent, or we've got what was I talking about to you earlier? The Incredible Hulk transitioning into a big green scary monster, or a werewolf, a person, popping out with hair coming. it's sort of a way of illustrating what's actually happening emotionally within the mind and the psyche of the narcissist. It's very much like a horror movie.
Yeah, I noticed like the whole like very kind of soft persona, like not too intrusive, but they have like criminal intent or malevolent intent underneath that. And then you start to see that, and they hold a deep arrogance. Like if you look at Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, it's like it seems like kind of a mild mannered guy to most people, but he really thinks that he's the best. Like he's the best at killing people. He's smarter than everyone. I mean, he doesn't say it. He won't talk to people about it, but he thinks that in his head.
Well, he knows that that's wrong in the general world. Like they're not feeling the same feelings that you and I are feeling, but they're intelligent and they're able to observe other people's feelings. So they know other people are feeling things and they can kind of mimic that, right? They're kind of mimicking other people's feelings. But you are correct. They don't actually have those same kinds of feelings. And there are a lot of reasons that people will say are potentially responsible for that. So when they do like brain scans on people with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, when they do brain scans or CAT scans on them, they will see that they have affected areas of their brain. Not sure how it happened. Could have happened in birth. So they have a smaller anterior insula, which is responsible for compassion, empathy, and self-reflection, emotional awareness. A damaged hippocampus that's responsible for assessing real memories, learning, and allows them to have magical thinking, like you were talking about. I'm the best, and this is fine. It's cool if I'm a serial killer and I'm the best one at it. They're quite delusional, and they have a shrunken amygdala, which is responsible for emotional processing, fear, guilt, envy, shame, those really deep emotions that people have. They have a blunted affect in the way that they express themselves, because they are wearing a bit of a mask. Because they know they're different.
The way they present themselves to the public, they know that's not the real them.
That's right. They know that would not be accepted. If they spoke out the way that they truly feel and think inside, that wouldn't be accepted in general, humanity. So they have to cover that up. But just like you were saying earlier, that, these mild-mannered people, they call them covert narcissists. And how many times have you had a serial killer story that you've heard about, and they say, oh, well, he was happily married with a beautiful child, or he was the local pastor, or volunteered for Habitat, for Humanity or whatever. And then you find out this person killed 20 people. I mean, I think Ted Bundy, right? Had a wife.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. Well, the thing too with Ted Bundy is like they pulled him in a bunch of times. They're like, it can't possibly be him. He's too handsome and smooth and charming. It couldn't be him. But all signs pointed to him, and eventually it was like, okay, it's got to be him.
And he's out there killing girls that look like his wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. So imagine being the wife in that, scenario. So, but yeah, that's a very extreme example of it. But a much less extreme example would be a narcissist that might not kill you or is not a serial killer. But let me just talk real quickly about, this is my sort of joking definition of the differences between narcissists, sociopaths, and psychopaths. But it's actually to some degree true. So I will, this is the way I tell people. I said, a narcissist will kill you and feel nothing about it. Not a thing, not a bit of guilt. A sociopath will kill you and feel nothing, but will also cut you up, bury you in the jungle, or throw you overboard. Psychopath will kill you, feel nothing, cut you up, but maybe eat a few pieces of you and save your head in the fridge. And those are the levels, but they are all the same type of thinking. This sort of transactional relationship between a person and another person. What can you do for me? What can I get out of this relationship? How can I overpower or, have control of this situation? And most people don't think like that. Most people think, let me hear you out. What can I do to help? Right? More empathetic, more do unto others as you would have them do unto you, understanding that you're a human, I'm a human. We both experience this difficult, role of being a human on this planet is hard. And so we want to have compassion for each other.
Well, are
But
they
for many
missing
reasons,
that
they
part
don't.
of like their brain or intelligence where they just don't associate with other people the way that all the rest of society does? Like they don't really care about you.
No, they do not care about you. They don't like you. They don't love you. Not even, and if they're saying it, they love you, it's because they want something from you.
It's
And those are
manipulation, yeah.
correct. That's the hard lesson that Erin, had to learn about. I was married 2 times. First husband was alcoholic, not narcissistic, I would say. He certainly knew how to use all their little tricks, the little projection, triangulation, blame shifting, and all those little mental trickery, that they can do when they're trying to trip you up and confuse you. But really, my second husband, I actually got a psych report on him about 18 years into the marriage. We were getting ready to retire to an island off the coast of Panama, built a beautiful house overlooking the Caribbean. And he kept promising me he was going to be happier there. He's going to be nicer to me there. We're under all this stress because he had a full-time job and I owned a children's music school and he was helping me. We were working 100 hours a week and it was going to be so much better. And they call that future faking. And I believe that he was trying to get me to go to another country where he was fluent in Spanish to isolate me from friends and from family so that I wouldn't have a support system and he could really do a number on my brain. And I'll tell you, by the time a narcissist is done with
Do you think he thought of
their
that?
tricks, you can't think.
Do you think he thought it through that fully? Like he kind of planned it out? Like in his mentality, he's thinking this is what it will accomplish, as opposed to like, oh yeah, this is work.
Yes, I do. That's another thing about a narcissist. Everything is intentional. There's an intention behind everything they say and do. I would have these conversations with my husband, and he would take a good 20 to 30 seconds to respond to almost everything I said. Just a big pregnant pause, and then he would answer. And I would say, why is it taking you so long to come up with an answer? And he was doing that, one, to frustrate me, to watch me spin around like a top and be upset because that makes him feel powerful. But also he would try to trick me by saying, well, I just want to give you the most thoughtful response. Right. And so then I'm thinking, oh, he just wants to be thoughtful.
Right.
Right. Yes, you got it. The most calculated, the one that's going to serve them.
Right.
Yeah. So, but you can easily be fooled because, your brain is very, very strong. And there's, what they call cognitive dissonance, where you can rationalize and you can tell yourself, well, yes, he's going to be nicer to me in Panama. We are under a lot of stress. He doesn't want this bad relationship. We're going to make it better, So yes, you can convince yourself of anything, and that's a survival tactic for your brain.
Well, cognitive dissonance is incredibly common. Like a lot of people have it in various areas of everything from like politics or religion to like relationships, whatever. But as far as like I don't know if it's different between a narcissist and a sociopath, but is there something that specifically triggers or that really gets to like a narcissist?
Each and every narcissist, at least that I'm aware of, has what they call a narcissistic injury, something that either happened to them that created perhaps like a mental break, where they just shut down or shut away. And so that would be a trigger. First of all, anybody walking the planet is probably triggered at times by certain things, correct? That remind them of their childhood. And you may not even be aware of it at all. My triggers would be not feeling seen or heard.
Like you might like a song better, the weather better, because you remember as a child, you really enjoyed that, so yeah.
Exactly. So a narcissist, it would be very extreme because they're barely holding it together to look normal in the world. They feel different. I oftentimes try to describe a narcissist experience, and I'm not, so I can't do it exactly. But from my own awareness of it, it's like they're the boy in the bubble. And they have all that magical thinking around them and the air in the bubble and everything. And, they can tell themselves that they're the best and the smartest and the strongest and the cleverest or whatever. But the minute you try to bust into that bubble, boy, you're going to get your arm chopped off, because their reality is all that they can handle. They can't handle real reality. And that's when they're going to snap. So if you put reality in their face, they're going to scramble, because they're used to being in charge. So they might snap. So I told you I was going to tell you a story about the very first time I ever saw my husband dissociate. And it was terrifying. So I thought I was looking at a werewolf. So what happened is we were arguing, just a argument like two people in a relationship might. It's anything specific. I don't even know if I remember what it was about. It was so long ago. And suddenly I see him start to do this. He's shaking, and his whole body is stiffened. And he does look like the Incredible Hulk, as if, his shirt's gonna bust open and he's turning green, literally. And I'm just standing there frozen. I don't know what's happening. And he looks at me and his eyes roll back and he goes, "I'm afraid of what I might do." And then he ran out of the house. And I sat there going, "This is my husband. What do you mean?
Extreme
What
reaction
you might do to me? What is that?" And I think he was in that moment thinking that he wanted to hurt me. Whatever I had said, I don't even remember, because it was so scary. I triggered it. I hit that nerve that, they are keeping so covered up to appear normal in the world. And you never know. They're pretty darn volatile when they are triggered in that way.
Do you think they constantly question themselves? If you look at Patrick Bateman in American Psycho, he's always going "Hey, am I really?" He always thinks he's a fake. So he always questions whether they did the right thing, whether they're going to think this of him, whether he's delusional, which he is. But
Yes.
Is that kind of a common trait?
I think under the surface, they're so deeply fearful, afraid of being found out. They're confused. They don't understand why we hug each other and love each other and are, vulnerable with each other. They don't understand stuff like that. So it's a really scary existence. It's almost like going to a foreign country. They feel like this is a social
thing they just have to do.
Yes, they absolutely, they can see. I don't know if you know much about autism spectrum, but people with autism, all on a spectrum of different levels and whatnot, different levels of being affected, they can learn to do pretty much just anything like another person. They may not learn it in the same way that others do by inference or experiencing it or seeing somebody doing it. They may have to learn it by being taught in school a lesson on how to shake hands or smile at a person or greet them in a certain way. So narcissists are also exist on a spectrum as well, too. So basically what I'm trying to explain is that they have learned how to appear normal.
Right.
And even better than normal. They appear to be glorious,
probably because they analyze it more, because they're so concerned about fitting in.
Yes.
They're looking at it from the outside, as opposed to this just feels natural. It's no, this is what I need to do to make society accept me.
That's absolutely true. And to be able to get close enough to people to get the needs that they have, they will have needs. They're just like everybody else in that they have needs. They may not have need for emotional closeness or intimacy, emotional intimacy in that way, but they definitely, if you have a nice house, they want it. If you have a hefty bank account, a fat bank account, they want it. If you're
what
beautiful,
it reminds me of? It reminds me of all those spam things, they'll sell you this or they want this, but their ultimate goal is just to take your stuff. So they try to figure out what's going to get to you the deepest, that's going to make you turn over your the number of your credit card, or the key to your house, or your whatever.
Absolutely. And so for me, my deep need was that I wanted a family. I grew up in this dysfunctional family, kind of left to myself, to raise myself. And so when I met this Eeyore, helpful, nice gentleman, I thought, oh, now I can have a family. I'd been divorced and I had a single son and he had a single daughter. I'm picturing the perfect mommy, daddy, brother, sister, cat, dog, white picket fence kind of thing. And so that's my vulnerability, that's what I wanted. So of course he moved that forward very quickly, moving in together, getting a house and locking up all our finances. So we have joint bank accounts and he's going to take care of everything.
Which should be a bad sign.
Yeah, right. Well, I've learned my lesson. So he's going to take care of everything. He's going to put the phone in his name. He's going to, whatever, get the mortgage on the house. He's going to, get us a security system or whatever it is. He's going to take care of everything. Right. I feel taken care of. I feel loved in a way that I didn't feel as a child. Right. So that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to get out of it. And so he is tuning into and tapping into my vulnerabilities and my wants and needs, and he is giving them to me. But notice he's controlling everything. The credit cards are in his name, the phone's in his name, the houses, all those things. And this can happen to anybody who is like, me, has a deep inherent need for like love and connection and family that I didn't have. I'm out there looking for it clearly in all the wrong places. And with a covert narcissist, you may not realize what kind of trouble you're in for many, many, many years. They're so good at playing this game. And they're getting what they want. They're getting physical intimacy. They're getting a roof over their heads. They're getting half your money or, access to your money until you find them out. And if you find them out or figure them out or whatever, they're out of there like yesterday's news and taking everything with them, by the way.
Did you get totally robbed? Like you got bilked or everything?
Oh, I sure did. I tell you a great story. So I had a house when we met that was paid off. It was a small house. I bought it for like $50,000, but it was paid off and I owned it outright. So he had no money to put down on the house we got together, but he had a good job so he could qualify for the mortgage. So I put my money down on the house and we signed a contract saying that if we ever split up, I would get my, the first amount that was equal to the amount I put in if we ever split up or sold the house. Right. Well, I had that agreement in my file, in my household file, and also in a safe deposit box for 17 years. When we went to sell the house, split up, it was missing. And where'd it go? I get a whole story about how he can't believe it. I ripped it up right in front of him just 4 years ago. I was so grateful for all the wonderful things he had done to be helpful for me that I forgave him $100,000. And maybe I have a brain tumor and I can't believe you don't remember, Erin. I'm so worried, Anyway, so stuff like that. So yeah, he moved a bunch of money down there and possessions and stole the house. He set the house up in Panama to give himself a majority interest because he was fluent in Spanish and because his father was a federal judge, so he knew how to do the legal work. So yeah, conniving all the way. So yeah, I was robbed. I don't want to say I'm in any way destitute. I'm just fine. I did get an apartment. We had a little, like a small apartment here in the United States. I'm outside of Philadelphia, and I got that, and the value on that went up, and I'm okay. Like I'm going to be fine. But he did take a lot. He did take a lot on his way flying out the door with everything. Many hundreds.
Do you think you tried to make it work a little bit harder because like of everything you've been through? So you were like, this is my chance. If I really put myself 100% into this time, I might accomplish it.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah.
And the marriage? Yeah, since I
like
had been married.
You had like a troubled childhood, another marriage with the guy who was the alcoholic. So you were like, maybe like this might be the one. Maybe I'll just try extra hard.
That's absolutely true. One, I didn't want to be divorced twice. I just didn't want to. I figured if I made one mistake and I made a second mistake, it's kind of like, I'm just going to make a third mistake. I clearly don't know how to pick the right person for me. And I really loved him, or I liked him a lot. Like when I say love, it's hard to feel that genuine connection to somebody when they're clearly lying to you and hiding things from you. he had like secret browsers and secret passwords and who knows, his second burner phone, PO boxes, like who knows what was going on right under my nose.
Do you think he loved you?
I don't think that narcissists are capable of love, unfortunately, and certainly not in the traditional way. I'm sure that he thought I was what they call a narcissistic connection, relationship, great supply. They call it narcissistic supply. And the reason why is because, one, I do get all worked up. If somebody, I don't anymore because I'm working through this. This is, why I wrote the book and, all the work I've been doing on myself to try to make sure I could never have this happen to me again. And one of the reasons I'm doing podcast interviews is I want some of this information out into the general public so people can start to recognize covert narcissism, so that they can protect themselves, because years go by and you don't know what's going on in your relationship until boom, it's like it all goes out from underneath you like a rug. With all of your possessions, all your worldly possessions too. So yeah, I was working extra hard at it. I wanted to make it work. And I'd been with him 20 years. I wanted to believe him that he was going to be happier and nicer. I'd look, Caribbean island, it has to be better. So yeah, I couldn't convince myself of anything. And you know what? I bet everybody else can too. You're, like you said, your brain is strong. That cognitive dissonance can tell you exactly what you want to hear. And so I like to tell people, tune into your feelings and trust your gut, because a narcissist has a very dark feeling energy. And, everything in the world is energy, right? Everything, even immobile objects are like, moving to some degree, right? So,
right. Well, they're all different theories about matter, antimatter, quantum theory. So how electrons on one side of the universe react to electrons on the other side of the universe. So
yeah,
I think as a species, we know very little about that.
Agreed. Why are people attracted to each other? Like, do they vibrate at a similar frequency? Like, what is it? Is it pheromones? Who knows? But same thing, with a narcissist, when you get around a narcissist, you're going to feel something isn't quite right. You're going to feel like lied to. You're going to feel maybe like being a secret is being kept from you. Like I had said earlier about the long pause, maybe to respond, right? Maybe they're looking for like a calculated response of how they can, turn the conversation to their advantage, right? So
do you mind going into a little bit more of his tics so that, I think that would be especially relevant to like, authors who are listening to this and they want to write about a character like this.
Yeah, I actually have a really good one. My husband picked at his hands and feet till they bled all the time. Every cuticle all around, just picking at them till bleeding, and then put a Band-Aid around it. And he would walk around with 10 bandages on his fingers all the time. So how I think that might be helpful to your authors that are tuned in is that internal war, the internal anxiety and confusion that's going on in somebody who is different, whether it be a monster, a werewolf, an alien, a shapeshifter, a transformer, a narcissist, right? These people know they're people or cyborgs or whatever, aliens. They're different than regular humans with standard emotion.
I would imagine, because I remember when you're talking about like the different categories like psychopath, sociopath, like a lot of them kind of seem to overlap. So I guess it's possible to be like a narcissist, but also have tendencies towards this or tendencies, or aspects of that character.
Yes, exactly. Totally dead on. That's why I was saying it exists on a spectrum. So a narcissist is somebody that they have the intention to one up you, get the upper hand, have control over you, and they don't have the empathy for you. So
everything's a power game. It's not really, they're not trying to relate. They're not trying to have like a genuine experience. It's more like, how can I turn this to my advantage?
That's exactly true. And then somebody who's a sociopath, they also don't care, but they don't care what anybody thinks, right? So when they kill you, they don't care. They don't care at all. A narcissist cares. They don't want to get caught. They don't want to get found out. They don't want to be exposed, right? So there's a slight difference in there. They still might kill you, but they're going to do a very good job covering it up. Sociopath is like, so what? I killed you. You were in my way. And a psychopath has just, it's so far above that disordered. But yeah, there's definitely crossovers. There are malignant narcissists and sociopathic narcissists and whatnot. And the most dangerous is what they call the covert or vulnerable narcissist. That's a person you just can't see coming. Like, what a real overt or grandiose narcissist looks like. They're coming in, they think they're all that. And I would say Patrick Bateman is an overt narcissist, right? Comes in, he's all confident. He's always smooth and looking dressed like $1 million. And
I'd say plenty of politicians are like not even picking a side. I'm just saying.
Right. We never want to say that, but I think we all know. I think even people on both sides would say that one of our more recent presidents probably suffers from some degree of narcissism. So on both sides.
I think a number of our recent presidents actually suffer from that.
Probably true, and whether that's a plus or a minus in a political, job as well, too. It's just either way, I don't want to be in a relationship with a narcissist ever again in my life. And I don't want any of your listeners to be either. And so if some of your writers, and maybe if you have some screenwriters that are, fans of yours as well, too, I would like to see more of the sort of subtle narcissism depicted in the media, because you just don't see it coming. Like, have you ever heard of a show called Dirty John? Have you heard of Dirty John as a show? Well, it was a series on Bravo and then Lifetime Netflix, and there are only 2 seasons of it, but it basically talks about narcissists. So I'll tell you just a quick, a quick summation of the first season. It's a true story. So a woman about 55 years old or so, she's an interior designer, beautiful girl with 2 adult daughters, met a guy online, kind of like the Tinder swindler, met a guy on a dating site, married him in Vegas. He was so cute and charming. And the daughters are like, Mom, there's something wrong with this guy. She won't listen to them. So they hired a private detective to follow him. They found out. Anyway, the mom then was scared and trying to get away from him. And when he realized they were on to him, he went to the daughter's place of business with a knife and was going to kidnap her and for ransom, because that's what he wanted, was the money that this woman had. She had a decent amount of money. Well, the daughter wrestled the knife away from him and killed him in the parking lot right outside her work. And this truly actually did happen. And there was a whole big,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like it's awesome that she killed him. Yeah.
Well, and she's the girl. What's her name? Julia Garner. Do you know who I'm talking about? Who played Little Ruth in Ozark? Did you see the show Ozark?
I never saw the show. I heard it was good, and then I heard it like abruptly ended.
It did abruptly end, and they killed Little Ruth, which was really sad. But she was a little spitfire. So she also plays that daughter in Dirty John that wrestles the knife away from her mom's husband and murders him in the parking lot.
That's pretty gangster.
And it did in fact happen. Yeah, highly recommend.
Okay.
Highly recommend. But what I wanted to say about that Dirty John series is the reason why I brought it up is because it's maybe say 10 episodes or something. And you see it going along and you see it from a particular perspective, meaning you see the story and the storyline and how they meet. But maybe in about the 9th episode, you'll see the same scenes. Okay. But then you'll see the behind the scenes. So you'll see, the narcissist, the guy she met online, and Dirty John. And then you'll see her. Bye-bye, honey. Here's your coffee, going to work, getting in the car, going to the gym. What are you doing today? Blah, 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 blah. She goes out into the car and he goes in her room. So suddenly you just see it and he's going through her phone and going through her drawers. And so that's what's really happening. But they're so good at playing along, you might never know. And I'll tell you, I did not know that my husband had a really disordered thinking for about 17 years. Can you believe that?
Did you know that he had the burner phones and stuff like that?
I would say that I knew he had secret browsers, that he would never have his browsers track any place he ever was online. So I didn't know he had another phone for a long time. But the browsers online, he would tell me because he was an IT professional at a big pharmaceutical company, That was just being smart. Right.
So
Just being
so
smart.
he had a way of like writing it all off, so it sounded reasonable to you. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And another, a real gift that I got was my husband was married before me for 13 years to somebody, and I got to compare notes with her after the fact, and she reported the exact same behavior. So 13 years she spent with him. I spent 20 years with him. So it's 33 years of trying to game women. It's crazy. And he's with another one already. So
Did he
another
manage
thing
to
too.
swindle her? Like he swindled
She
you?
doesn't have anything to swindle from the new one, I don't think, but I think they can't be alone. They just cannot be alone. They can't regulate their own emotions. So they need another person to help them regulate their emotions. If they're feeling stressed, they got to push that down on you.
But they need it for them. Like they don't care about the other person. It has nothing to do with the other person as long as they have something on their side.
Yes. Yes, because they can't.
An accoutrement. It's like I have this jacket, but it happens to be a girlfriend or it happens to be a wife.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. They need somebody there to be able to project their own deep self-loathing onto. Otherwise, they might feel bad, and they can't let that happen. So they always have, one crossing over. My husband, when we were splitting up, like toward the end, he screamed at, okay, so let me just make sure I tell the story properly. He comes from 5 siblings, and one of his siblings was married and divorced 5 times and on to the 6th one. So while we're fighting, I'm like, what the heck is wrong with your family? Like, it's so many freaking divorces. You guys are a mess. And he looked at me and he goes, we're the best at everything. We're top of everything, even divorces, kind of a thing. And then he yelled at me and said, and my brother that's had the, 5 or 6 or whatever, he said, I'm always impressed with him the most because he's always got one waiting in the wings. Right. And that was his way, my husband's way of letting me know I got one in the wings.
Right.
Yeah. Went right over my head. Woo, see ya. And I'm sure he's like laughing at me and going, look at that. I just confessed. They'll confess everything. But, your brain will say, well, I don't want to believe that. So let me tell myself something different that I can deal with.
That's what Patrick Bateman does in American Psycho. Like he'll confess. And like, oh yeah, you're just kidding. Oh, you're so crazy. But he's actually telling you, he's like, yeah, I just chopped up and murdered somebody. Like, all right, Patrick, you drank too much. Go to sleep.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's crazy. That's obviously Patrick Bateman is the most extreme example of what we're talking about. A real narcissist is far more subtle, but that is what's going on, under the veil, below the veil.
Well, I think that was also, that was kind of like a take on Wall Street, and that like, the Wolf of Wall Street sort of money class, I don't care about anything except for what I'm fetishizing today.
That's absolutely it. But they know they can't, proceed through life like that, with that sort of that being their obvious motivation, right? So they're just, like I said, clever and cunning. They got to get their needs met. And, let me just talk a little psychology here for just a second. Some of the theories about narcissists, they say maybe in utero, some kind of a birth defect, or, some kind of an effect from in utero, but also maybe early caregiving. So perhaps if you're an early caregiver, so you're a child, your caregiver is your mom, your dad, your nanny, your grandmom, whoever comes and takes care of you when you need help. So when you're a baby, you're just born like a little blob, right? You don't know anything. You're like a blank slate, downloading all of your surroundings and all of your, what's happening around you. And the most important thing to figure out as a baby is, how do I get my needs met? Right? How do I get fed? How do I get diapered? How do I get held? That's what I need as a baby. So a baby will cry. And if that caregiver comes and meets the baby's needs, the baby will have what's called a secure attachment. They know that if they reach out and ask for help, they will get their help. So a baby that perhaps does not get their needs met for one or another reason, perhaps there's violence in the home, perhaps mom or dad or whoever is the caregiver is alcoholic and they're passed out on the couch, baby cries, nobody comes. That baby needs to find an alternative way of getting their needs met, right? And they don't trust other people to meet their needs, right? So they might have to do it in a more coercive way.
Well, yeah,
So
that gets to the whole like theory of upbringing, abandonment, all sorts of issues have to do with how your psychology develops as you grow up.
yes, and it has a huge impact on your choices of adult relationships with others, because you're often trying to work through your own issues, your own childhood issues, by picking somebody that is familiar to you,
Right.
And when I wrote my book, here, I'm going to pick it up here. Here it is. Here's my book. Here's my book. When I wrote my book, I learned something I had never even considered before, is that my mother had a much bigger impact on my choice of relationships than I ever believed was possible. I blamed my father. I used to think, well, my father is emotionally unavailable and alcoholic and depressive. And that's why I choose emotionally unavailable men, that I
Right.
can't connect with. That must be what I'm doing. And then one day my mom said to me, yeah, but why are you so vindictive? And I thought, uh-oh. And then I realized, my mom was a little more on the selfish, kind of conniving, kind of vindictive side. And I will, God rest her, she's a lovely woman in a lot of ways, but maybe not meant to be a mommy. And so, yeah, so in writing the book, I was able to draw connect the dots of my life and figure out how was I, somebody who was, successful, independent, seemed to have good self-esteem. How did I get snatched up by a narcissist, Well, it's because I was thinking outside of myself and I wanted somebody to fix my empty hole in my life. And that was not having a family and not feeling loved. So when a narcissist approaches you, they're doing what's called love bombing. And they are buying you flowers and presents and this and taking you on trips and telling you you're beautiful. And it just goes on and on. You're my soulmate, right? And so somebody wanting to hear that is very susceptible to, oh, I've met my perfect match. And while they're doing that, they're also doing something called mirroring, which is they're matching up with everything you say and do. So if you said, my favorite movie is Evil Dead, they're like, oh, my favorite movie is Evil Dead. Yeah. So if anybody says their favorite movie is Evil Dead to you, run. It's a narcissist. Right. Come and watch out. But yeah, so stuff like that. And you may even forget you have your hat on. Right. And you're going, oh my God, how did they know? Like, oh, right. So, and they're doing that intentionally. So my husband was like, oh, my favorite band is this. And I was a lifeguard too. And they're just, oh, and my favorite movie was The Princess Bride. Yeah. So it's all those kinds of, they say they match up with you because, this is how they're going to get you hooked. Right. And it's very addictive because they're doing it so intentionally to match up with exactly what it is that you want. And then once they've got you and you're in that relationship or living together or married or whatever, then, of course, the devaluing stage sets in and they've got you. So all of a sudden now they know you from mirroring you and listening and not divulging any information. They can also use that skill to attack you, to hit you with those little barbs. So you're like, ow, man, this person knows exactly where my vulnerabilities lie. And my biggest one was, like I said, as a child, not feeling seen and heard. So when I would try to get my mom's attention, I'd be like, Mom, 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 she'd ignore me. So what did my husband do? Hun, can I ask you a question? Right? How did he learn to do that? I must have told him that my mom, did that to me.
So he was like a manipulation tool.
Yeah. So like I said, it's all intentional. They're studying you, they are studying you for a purpose. And it's really because they're left with no other way to operate in life. They don't have the natural instincts and feelings and emotions and connectiveness that others have, and they know it. But they still have to get their needs met, right? So they have to do it in a different way. They can't just cry and say, I need a hug.
I think the most mentally troubled person that we're now with showed up, and this I think was the first time. Like I did a shoot where posed as a zombie. She showed up with a print of that on her t-shirt. Like that's kind of weird.
Yeah. And you know, she probably didn't think about that for a second, like whatever. But yeah, so you see it and you're like, well, that's a little close.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe the second time I see you would be good.
Maybe it's going a little
my
bit
birthday.
yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
you're getting a little too extreme. I don't know. It's kind of weird. All right, so let me ask you, I think one of the things that's really relevant is like you see a bunch of like kind of famous serial killers like Albert Fish or Ed Gein or like Charles Manson. Like, where would you classify them on the spectrum?
Well, I would definitely think those kind of people are, you know, all of these things, you know, malignant, egomaniacal, you know, lack of empathy, control, you know, power. And underneath it all, like I said, in the very core of this, and I'm not giving them any empathy for it because it's too dangerous to get too close to them, but it's deep fear. It's deep fear and self-loathing. But they can't even acknowledge that. It's like they hate themselves so much. So yeah, those people are usually, I would call those sociopaths more so,
Right.
A serial killer who
people,
maybe.
What about people like Richard Ramirez, like the Night Stalker? I don't know if you're familiar with him, but the whole he thought he was a Satanist, he's killing everybody. You think that was like him trying to like find an identity?
Yeah, perhaps, you know what? Right. Melding with other people's identity and stuff. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I don't know, like I said, it's all on a spectrum. Like I said, narcissism, sociopathy, psychopathy.
It's hard to draw a line in the sand.
Yeah,
like maybe they have a little bit of element of this, and they cross genres. Yeah.
Yep, they all cross over. But like I said, it all comes from the same place. It's just a level. Like I said, it exists on a spectrum. So, everyone has a good degree of narcissism as a part of, who they are in their makeup. I mean, you and I are sitting here talking and assuming that other people in the world want to listen to what we have to talk about. That takes a little bit of narcissism, right? So there's healthy narcissism in the world. It's
Right.
just that as it goes to a disordered level, it's certainly very dangerous. And for people who have been wrapped up in relationships with these people, the aftermath is it's mind-blowing coming out of something like this, because you have to kind of reprocess your entire relationship with a different lens. I'll go back over and going over the wedding, when he said, as you wish, I love you. What he was really saying was, I can't wait until this, is legal so that I own half the house. Right.
Or maybe he did actually think that at the moment, and then literally thought, well, I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes people, they get in a mindset for like 5 minutes, and then they try and like break it down, and they go, well, I thought this because it really leads to this, so this is really me. Like they kind of rethink their mentality later on.
I actually do think you're right. I do think you're right. Honestly, I think that they want to look at another person and say, this person is going to make me feel better. This person is going to make me happy because they are beautiful and they're into me and they have money and they have friends, and my life's going to be much better now because I've now got this person, in my clutches. So they like me. So they're great. They have all these things to offer. Lucky me. Right. But the second they get you, like I said, either you're moved in together or you're in an exclusive relationship, you as a person, this target person, you're going to do something human. You might burp, you might lose your job. You might snore, or,
So
who knows?
You don't rise to the pedestal like the imaginary person that they envision.
You're not going to fix everything.
Right.
And in fact, you're going to have needs. You're going to be flawed. You're going to have bad days. And you might actually criticize the narcissist, even in the smallest way. Like, oh, honey,
well, how dare you? Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't I tell you to take out the trash? Well, suddenly you're not that person. They don't see you as a full range of a human being, with good and bad and mixed emotions and good days and bad days. You are there to fix their problem Their problem is the
You're
self-loathing.
this idealized character, and the minute you aren't, it's like you're a wash.
Exactly. That's even when they talk about the cycle of abuse, they say idealize, devalue, discard, hoover. Idealize, devalue, discard, hoover. And the reason idealize is this love bombing stage we're talking about. The devaluing is once they got you and they see you're human. It's like, I thought I picked somebody who was going to fix everything. And then they discard you to go off to the new person, or, just to get rid of you because you're not meeting their needs anymore. But then they want to feel extra power and control, and they will try to charm you back. Right. So they'll come, they call that the hoovering, like the suck you back in like a Hoover vacuum. That's why they call it hoovering. Right. Yeah. Kind of funny. So the Hoover, and that's only to discard you even harder and take whatever last crumbs they possibly could, because how dare you fail them? Right. You failed them. They had an expectation of you to fix them, and you didn't do it because you can't. You
missed the mark, so you're a fail. Like it's probably a quick cutoff too. It's like you're one thing in their mind, and the minute you don't fill that gap, all of a sudden you're worthless.
Yes, and you were erased. You are completely erased. Can I tell you, I was married to my husband for 20 years. I'll never hear from him again. I didn't hear from him when my mom died. My son, his stepson, he was a stepfather of my son since he was 7 years old, right? So my son was 27 years old when he took off for Panama. Not a goodbye and not a word since, right? And so that's different to me. Like I'm not used to that. I'm used to talking things through and, at least having some kind of peace with an ex, or whatever. Right. But no, they have a family motto in his family called, if you're not at lunch, you are lunch. Yeah. Now, I thought that always meant if you're not at lunch, we're going to talk about you behind your back. Right. But the truth of the matter is, if you're not a part of our family, you're dead. It's very mob-like thinking, you're in or you're out.
Right.
So that's why they call it a discard. And for a person that's been discarded, it's soul crushing. Here you are trying to love this person and help this person. And you think, you're just doing your best, and suddenly you're just erased,
But you're spinning your wheels. You're going nowhere.
Yeah.
Like everything you put into it was a waste of time.
Oh, I thought of another thing that maybe would be a good thing for your writers. That would be a little aspect of something that they do and that my husband did for me. They like to instill fear in others so that you become dependent upon them for protection, right? So they'll sort of like say things like, oh, be careful out there walking the dog, right? Because I saw a coyote yesterday, right? Maybe never saw a coyote at all, whatever, right? But then all of a sudden you're like,
it's pretty common, like with anybody that has like the people that are afraid that their girlfriend might find somebody else attractive, so they always mention like, oh, it's dangerous, oh, if you go out, I trust you, but
right, all right. So my husband built me a safe room in the house. A safe room. So up in the attic, he built with a little closing door that pulled behind me with a burner phone with a little set of instructions on the door in case, and this is what he told me, my first husband ever came to the house to try and kill me. Now, never
Where did
for
that
one,
come from?
Just trying to instill fear in me. So I became dependent on him and isolated and separated from my first husband, my son's father. Right. So he's putting like a thought in my head that my son's father, my first husband, is a danger to me. Right. Never thought that before. But suddenly I'm like, wow, well, why would he have said that if it's not true? I shouldn't be foolish. I should hear him out, because why would he tell me that if he didn't think maybe I wasn't safe? And you start feeling not safe anymore unless the narcissist is there to protect you. Right. So you become more dependent on them. So instilling fear. So I don't know if your authors can just keep in mind, we're talking about how they have this deep fear and self-loathing. And that would be any monster, any form of any monster as well, too. And maybe, Think about even King Kong, right? So he's got Jessica Lange up there under his arm on the Empire State Building. It's like, I'm going to protect you. Oh, hold on a second, right? You're a big King Kong monster ape. So I'm not safe here. You could crush me. But yeah, so that's something I think it's possible that you could sort of work in the fact that, you know, as they're trying to control their potential victim, they're instilling fear and dependency on them in a way that makes them afraid of others, but not afraid of the actual perpetrator.
Although I don't really think that I'm King Kong. I mean, I agree with you on a lot of cases, but I don't really think King Kong, like, he's a bad guy. I think it's more his animalistic instinct kicks in and he thinks, this is my female. You know, so he probably was like, because I mean, he's not going to understand planes and statuesque buildings and stuff like that. So it's probably like he's just floundering, trying to find what to do.
Well, I just think about, you know, he's got her in his hand, you know, up there on the Empire State Building. He really could crush or drop her,
right?
Too. Yeah, could crush or drop her.
Yeah, but
so she's dependent on him to not fall too, you know?
No, it's true, but I mean, he's probably not thinking of crushing or dropping her. He's thinking of protecting her. Like, even though it's like overall a bad scenario, I'm just saying, like, in his mind, especially his more primitive mind, it's like this is what I need to do. This is what I'm supposed to do.
Well, definitely. I know that, yeah. So I think that there's, that's just an aspect. We would walk around, you know, walking the dog anywhere, and he'd say, here's another thing. We'd go to parties and he would stand in the corner like a totem pole. And I'd say, why aren't you mingling and talking to people? And he'd say, I just have to keep a watch out in case somebody tries to hurt you.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
always back to the manipulation.
Yeah. At a cocktail party across the street, you know, like, what? That we live in a nice neighborhood. What do you mean? Well, you never know. You know, and like I said, they're trying to instill this doubt in you so that you don't feel safe unless they're there to protect you. That way they can watch you and make sure that, you know, you're behaving the way they want you to. You're not cheating on them. They're so paranoid. They're so, you know, filled with fear. And it's a sad existence, but you can't do anything about it. I mean, there are people who are what they call like woke narcissists. You can find them on YouTube. People, maybe a few people that say that they've been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and they're trying to work through it. But they'll also tell you how they actually think. And they just have to learn how to behave more appropriately because the feelings are just really not there. They're just not there. And so that's why I tell people, tune into your feelings. You know, I had a big disconnect between my brain and my feelings because I grew up in Manhattan where it was like danger on every corner, right? I'm alone. I'm a kid in New York. And, you know, so I had to kind of be hyper vigilant.
Probably when you were there, like what years were you there?
Well, I'm pretty old. So I was there from 1959 to 1971.
Right.
So I would say 1970s, the New York was very dangerous.
But when like taxi driver style of like, you know, downtown, lots of corruption. Yeah.
And you know what? It was where I lived on the Upper West Side. I didn't live on the East Side where all the money people were or in Midtown or in the cool village. I lived on the Upper West Side, like just about 10 blocks down from Harlem. So at the time, it was not a particularly, you know, nice neighborhood in Manhattan. It wasn't a terrible neighborhood. It was a nice building and whatnot. But all around me were like, you know, open lots and, you know, blown up buildings and rubble around, you know, and all kinds of crazy stuff, crime and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I think I lost my place about being in New York.
You were just talking about where you're from. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess from New York, you know, I think that, being disconnected in the heart and the mind, that's what I was talking about. And I'm really trying to tune into my gut because the very first date that I had with my husband was weird right away. You know, there were a couple weird things that he either said or did, like he didn't eat his lunch. You know, he ordered lunch, just sat there, didn't even touch it. I said, aren't you going to eat your lunch? Because it was sushi. He says, I had a big breakfast.
Right.
First, I'm thinking, why did you have a big breakfast if you were coming out to lunch with me? Or why did you order something if you weren't hungry? So that didn't add up. Okay. But I loved the attention I was getting. So I kind of like pushed that to the side. But when I look back on it, I have to say, well, I feel lied to. What probably happened is he'd never had sushi and he wanted to look cool in front of me.
Right.
But he lied.
I also feel like you can't necessarily judge people off of that like first impression. I mean, you'll get cues, but like maybe the cues don't really like they don't come out further down the line. Like maybe like he was feeling a little sick that day and didn't want to tell you. I mean, in this case, obviously it ended up like not being a good thing. But I'm just saying, like, it's some people act a certain way, but there are motivations you don't see behind it.
Well, absolutely. And that's how I am. I'm a forgiving and empathetic person. I was like, oh, he must be uncomfortable or awkward or whatever. I even thought it was possible he'd never had sushi, was too embarrassed. And I thought that was kind of sweet and cute. And, there were a few other things that happened too on that date, but each one of them made me feel like, oh, that doesn't really set well with me. So I just want to,
I'm sure in like hindsight, you were like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Yes. And so that's what, I don't know that, I mean, if I could tell you the second thing that happened is that I was working at a theater. So I took him back after lunch to show him the bones of the theater, the whole backstage area and the lighting and the rigging and all how a theater works. And as we walked in, the box office manager comes running out screaming and yelling like, Erin, I need your help. The system is down and we can't sell tickets. And so I'm paying attention to her. And all of a sudden I realized I got to get to work. Let me tell this guy, it was so nice to meet you. Thank you for lunch, but I got to go. I turn around, look, he's gone. Didn't tap me on the shoulder, didn't say goodbye, not a peep, just disappeared. Right. So that was another thing where I was like, what was that all about? I'm like, maybe he didn't like me.
Yeah.
Like I said, there were 3 or 4 little things where I was like, that was weird. But then when I got home from work that day, there was a message on my machine like, oh, I had a wonderful time at lunch. I'm sorry I ran off like that, but I'd really like to see you again. And so I just pushed that weird feeling out of my head. And I thought,
that's probably a little manipulation as well. The whole like, you feel abandoned. They're like, oh, no, he really feels this way. And, I mistook it. And,
And I did that to myself because of what I wanted. And like I said, I'm not here to malign anybody. It takes 2 to tango. Unfortunately, 2 people that had, traumatic childhoods came together. But this is such a common story, Dan. There are so many people and so many young people. And what I really want to do is I want to get my messages, the message out to younger people. Because imagine having this information and knowing how narcissists act and where it's going before you meet one, right? So one, you can recognize one coming and know what their agenda is, and also protect yourself, in the long term. So move slowly, pay attention to your gut, move slowly. Big thing is if anybody tries to invalidate your experience, deny what you experienced, then get away from somebody like that. If you say, well, this happened, and they're like, that's not what happened. You're making it up. You're imagining it. Get away. That's the most dangerous thing they do. You'll turn your brain right to mashed potatoes because that's gaslighting. And you don't know. Gaslighting is so powerful because, like I said, think about how people can be hypnotized, right? It's probably another thing that would happen in horror movies as well, too, because your brain can be manipulated.
Probably the minute they started gaslighting you, you should, like, all sorts of questions should pop up. Like, wait a minute.
Right. So if you say this happened or I saw this, no, you didn't, get away. If somebody ever accuses you of something you're not doing in a strong way, you're cheating, you're lying, you're stealing, you're
usually means they are. So they're like, I would do that. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. That is 100% all the time. That is projection. And they're doing it, and they triangulate others. It's a sad existence, but you don't want to get wrapped up in one because it's darn confusing. It could take years and years to get out of it. You could lose a lot, and the recovery time takes, like I said, years because I'm reprocessing everything. And I know that sounds very clinical to say reprocess, but just thinking about things that happened and looking at it with a different lens. Like I remember being so depressed and so feeling so broken after years with him. My health was so affected. I couldn't sleep. It was just an awful time, and I couldn't figure out what was going on and what was wrong. I said to him, I wish I were dead one day. And he didn't say a word, right? So what's your husband supposed to say? Your husband is supposed to say, oh my God, honey, no, I love you. Like, do you need help? Should we get you to a psychiatrist? Do you need mood meds, something, anything? Like, I would not want anything to happen to you, right? Well, he said nothing. You know why? Because he's probably thinking, hey, my work is almost done here, right? But you can't say that. That's not appropriate. And it's shocking that I'm saying this about another human being, right?
I like the air quotes, human being.
Human being. Yeah. Look, I have to say, I don't really believe that people with narcissistic personality disorder could be considered human. I mean, I know they're in a human form, but personally, I think that empathy makes you a human being. Being a human is so challenging that I think you should have compassion for all other humans going through this really challenging journey of being a human. So
it definitely doesn't make you social. I guess there are like technical scientific terms about self-awareness, stuff like that, about what makes you human. But you're definitely not like a good member of society if you have problems.
That is true.
Like that. Yeah.
Like I said, they can be however they want to be. You guys go over there to your planet or wherever you're going, and us nice people with empathy for each other that want to be truthful.
We'll be on the next Elon Musk rocket.
Yeah, you guys go on the Elon Musk rocket to whatever planet is for you. Like, do you know? I mean, I think this is true. Let me tell you, maybe you know better than I do. You seem a smart fellow, but didn't they put all of the criminals in England and Australia? Didn't they do that like a million years ago? It was a
British colony for quite a while.
Yeah.
A lot of people came there eventually, but yeah, that was the start of it.
Right. So that's kind of how I feel. Get them their own planet. You can all narcissist each other all day and night.
Although I will say that Australians are some of the nicest people now. So, yeah.
This is true. But that's why we're going to get them another planet, some other planet, maybe far, far, far away, far, far, far away. So that's pretty much my story. Like I said, I've been getting tons and tons of communication, great emails and notes and reviews for my book from people that have been through this, that feel validated, that have a better understanding. One girl wrote me and said, thank you for reminding me to trust my gut and to know that I can't change this, can't change it. And that's true of anybody that's not happy. You can't change another person. So you really just have to focus on yourself. Put yourself first, love yourself first, learn to trust your gut, and that'll keep you safe from predatory people, because there are people out there that are predators, and that's another thing I think that was that like little kind of connection in the horror realm, right? Is that predators and serial killers, they are hunting, right? Because they don't have that emotion. They're hunting for that thrill, for that kill, that satisfaction that they're looking for. And they don't, the same things don't satisfy them that satisfy.
They find a trigger that fills the empty void that most people would have filled with something else.
Correct. Yes, correct. So,
Erin, so tell me how people can see your stuff and how they can see what you're up to. Like, I take your book is available on like Amazon and Barnes and Nobles.
Yep. It's everywhere. So I'll hold it up again so you can see. Just really quick, this demon sort of represents the demon that's kind of underneath the skin of a narcissist. There's a halo above it, right? Because they're playing the good guy, the false self. And then over here, there's a little earring in his ear because he's a pirate and he got away with everything. And then the country of Panama is kind of behind it. So there's the story, right?
Right.
So I wrote the book. I'm promoting the book. I'm doing, events and book, discussions and tours and book clubs and things like that. The book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. You can go into any bookstore in the world and order it. They may not stock it, but it'll be, you can order it. People have ordered it all over the world, in India and in Australia, where all those nice people are, right? In Australia. And I have a website, adarkforce.com. And on the website, I sell autographed copies of the book. And as I showed you earlier, little voodoo dolls, right? Because they're just fun. And, if you can't laugh about hard things in life, what's the point, right? you got to kind of keep a light attitude to get through some hard things. So that's it. I'm on everywhere. I'm on Instagram. A Dark Force is the book. So A Dark Force on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, website. I'm everywhere.
Okay. Do you have a blog?
I don't have a blog. Do you think I should start one?
I don't know. I mean, if you want to, I feel like I need to because I do so many projects and I'm trying to get people interested in them. But maybe if you have one project, I'm sure like in social media, like, podcasts or Instagram or Facebook, maybe TikTok, you put a little tutu and like, dance, talk about your book,
Not at my age. No tutus and dancing. No. But yeah, no, that's absolutely, it's certainly something I would definitely consider. I am working on a few other things. I'm going to be on an Amazon Prime show that's called The Recording Artist, and it's a producer in Scottsdale, Arizona. His name is Otto Diagnolo. And what he does is it's like a reality show. We record 3 different bands in an hour-long show in real time. We get 2 hours to record each band. So each band submits music. We choose the music. We record a song in 2 hours. And then of those 3 bands that are a part of the hour-long show that we do on the website, therecordingartist.com, the finalists go on to the show on Amazon Prime. So I'm the music supervisor for that. And I kind of help the bands move on to the show on Amazon Prime. And I'm also working with an all-girls group called womenwhorock.com network. And that will be an all-girls radio station. So all female fronted radio station. And I'm going to be, I think, doing a podcast for them called Nevertheless, She Persisted. And I want to do survival stories. So, but we're just getting all that stuff together, building the website, getting all the trademark, what all that stuff's all about. So we're just getting the thing together. In fact, while I was talking with you, I missed my weekly Zoom call with the ladies of the radio, but they're understanding. So I wanted to be here with you. I was really excited to meet you and to see how we could talk a little bit about how narcissists are very similar to, it's like a real life horror story. It is so similar. It's frightening and it's quite dangerous as well too. So I'm a big fan of horror and have been a fan of your podcast. And so it's an honor to chat with you. Such a creative individual. So
thanks, Erin. And I think you gave some valuable tips. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Do you have anything else that you want to give a shout out to?
Oh, I only showed you, but I didn't get to show you my, can they see this? This is my beloved Camp Crystal Lake thing. I actually went to the campground site and took a tour of it. So they have everything all set up with the rubber snake and the little, the beetle, the bug, the car is there.
Yeah.
Right. And they've got little Robbie up against, tied up against a tree with a, knife in her. It's lovely. So
I refer to Jason as like the best character in the worst movies.
Right. Exactly. Oh, and it's so funny. It's so funny. So yeah. So they had everything. They even have at the very end where, Jason comes out of the water and, whatever. They even have that all set up where there's like a canoe they have tied in the lake there. And they have a, like a thing that comes out. The guy hits a button and this scary thing comes out.
Very comfortable.
Yeah. But it was fun. I love stuff like that. I think I want to, this summer, I'm going to go to the Lizzie Borden house. That'll be another one of my little horror side trips. That's up near Cape Cod. Yep. So anyway, I'm a fan and I thank you for trying to fit me into this story. I thought it might be kind of a cool conversation. So I enjoyed it.